Bienvenidos a Conversando con la Mary Juana, el podcast que te acerca a la magia de lo cotidiano, celebrando a mujeres que, aunque ordinarias, son pura chispa extraordinaria. El día de hoy, nuestra invitada no pudo llegar, tuvo una emergencia, así que vamos a aprovechar el momento para, pues, introducirme un poco y hablarles acerca de lo que es este proyecto que se está creando, que es Conversando con la Mary Juana. Para los que no me conocen, my name is Mary, y mi nombre de autor es La Mary Juana. Durante COVID me puse a escribir un libro por diversión, and I ended up publishing it, and I became a published author. So dream big, people. Dream big and put your mind to it, and dreams will come true. Anyway, yeah, that's how the name came to be, La Marijuana. It's kind of a play on words because, well, smoking weed has like a negative connotation in many cultures, but especially like when our family calls anyone or refers to anything as marihuano or lo marihuano is, I think that they kind of refer to someone who is like a junkie, drug addict that is homeless in the streets in a way. That's kind of like the reference that I get from their expression, which is totally inaccurate because I feel like a lot of people, especially here where we live in California, are pro cannabis, and I think that most of the people that I come around are stoned. Like if you pay attention and if you observe, you'll notice that they're either hitting a cartridge pen, or their eyes are like bloodshot red, and there's a slowness to their walk and whatnot. But yeah, I think definitely like here in the States is where I've opened my mind up a little bit more to the cannabis lifestyle. But yeah, that's where the author's name came from, and how I, refer to myself whenever I'm creating, I suppose, dialogue, thoughts, um, anything in the creative writing realm. It really speaks to me. I think that's the best way I can express myself, and I really have a um, strong belief that communication will help us navigate more easily our relationships, our work, our creative process, and just our life in general. I think it's one of the most beautiful things, skills that we can learn as humans, and the fact that we can communicate with others in different languages and speech and writing. Talks about how much our mind has evolved. But yeah, I am soon to be 28 years old. And I kind of struggle with the wording in English. And for any of you bilinguals, tell me if you have a situation like this, or a moment that resembles this, and write it down, because I like to read people. Yeah, my trouble with the wording in English about like how old you are is that there's also a negative connotation on the old part. I think when you ask someone in Spanish, "Oh, ¿cuántos años tienes?" it doesn't seem as negative as like asking someone in English how old you are, just because of the wording, right? Like old. Um, but yeah, I guess like whenever I ask people, it's one of the things I'm like, I don't want to tell them they're old, because like regardless, that's the impression you're gonna get. But yeah, I'm 28. I recently started a family. I've been a mom for 2 years, and that's been fun and challenging. and really eye-opening as to how delicate um, childhood is and how important our decisions are when shaping the lives of these tiny humans. And I think that we tend to forget that they are new to the world and that they don't know anything and they're eager to learn. And I feel like toddlers are just misunderstood. Um, I feel like we get to their level and get to know the tiny, tiny human that is developing and that lives in them. Um, it's not hard to fall in love with these tiny souls. They're just so inquisitive and loving and chaotic and um, just beautiful. They're wonderful, but it's tough, man, because they have tons of energy. And I think that one of the things that is difficult, I suppose, in motherhood is that there's someone that's constantly needing something of you, whether it be food, attention, um, you know, your voice. They just want to see you near, whatever it may be. You're like constantly giving, 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 giving. Um, and, sometimes in return, you'll get like, no, or slaps, or, some of the behaviors that you're like, wait, what? Because they're wild. But I guess that's what it's like, right? When you're growing up and discovering the world and testing boundaries of people in your own. Um, I don't know. I'm proud to say that I've given my toddler a safe and peaceful home. One that is not, extremely loud or congested with um, guests. I think my only fault is that uh, I get excited for the toys and then we overcrowd ourselves with toys and we have more toys than our own furniture. But I'm working on that. We'll find the balance eventually, I guess. um, Getting a little bit into my art though, um, into like my writing and whatnot, and I think it redefined the concept of art for me. I think art and creativity. I think that it's it comes in different mediums, and by that I mean not just writing or painting or crafting. I mean like um, being able to make art out of your day, to be creative with your day, and you know, doing the ordinary things in such a meaningful and present way that it becomes art. Once you put your time and attention and presence into anything that you're doing, I think that it becomes art, and that's when your creativity flourishes. And I think that we need to give ourselves a lot more credit than we do, because we are our worst critic. And sometimes, that's counterproductive and that can, um, well, kill the creative inside of us. And I think that if you haven't found a medium, just creating the life that you want to live makes you a great artist. Um, and by that, I mean like being true to yourself always, and being unapologetically about the decisions that you make for your own good. And I think that we demonize the person that chooses themselves over others, especially in my culture. Well, I'm Mexican American, but we demonize people, women especially, who prioritize themselves over their loved ones. And I think that it's important that we, uh, demystify this idea that we are supposed to be selfless, and to put others' well-being before us, because then we well, I think it's a way of self-harm, right? Like, you are putting everyone before your own needs. um, that it just makes, sorry, it just makes your um, emotional state unbalanced. um, so I think that, owning yourself and owning your life and being able to decide with your own well-being first is a skill that we must acquire. But it helps us develop um, a sense of autonomy for our life. Um, yeah, right. Um, that skill is definitely like an art form of itself. You definitely have to practice and practice and practice, like any other craft, um, to be good, better, and an expert, right? So, I guess a couple of the questions that I want to answer so that people really understand where I'm coming from, um, and where I'm at, I guess, in my creative process. I was born and raised here in California. And, I went to school here up until fourth grade. And then one day we got on a plane, we left, and we started life in Mexico. And so I was there for like 5 years, I want to say, like from fourth grade to a sophomore year, which made the transition a little bit hard because everyone already had like their friend groups in high school, and I came in a little bit later rather than like at the beginning. So it was kind of a strange transition, but one that I think I faced pretty admirably. It was challenging, and I could have myself gone to a really, really like negative place, like a very depressive state. But I, tried my best and like focused to excel in school, which is, what I was like taught and expected to do. But if I could describe my teenage years in 3 words, I would say it was pretty chaotic and painful and confusing. But I think that that's what growth feels like in general, not just in like my teenage years, but whenever change is happening in someone's life, it usually presents itself as being chaotic, painful, and confusing. Like if you think about when you are working out and you are trying to transform your body, you're literally going through a physical change. And well, it's, kind of chaotic because you have to figure out where to start. And um, there's so many mistakes along the way when if it's with food or with the right exercises or the right, um, schedule to do these things. It's, you know, confusing because again, you don't know where to start. Where do you ask for help? It's overwhelming, the information that we have out there on the subject. Um, Changing your lifestyle and creating new habits may also create problems with like the people around you, especially as they depend on you for like food making, right? if you suddenly have to change your nutrition and the people around you don't like it so much and then sign up for it, then you might, might create a problem there. So, well, that's where I stand on change or transitions. At this point, I've become open and welcoming to these emotions because I know how to handle them a lot better. And I've had a lot of experience. I mean, I think having to assimilate not only to Anglo society while I was growing up here and going to, American school system and trying to assimilate there and try to understand my environment and at the same time because it's kind of confusing when you're growing up in a bicultural state where you don't really have much help from the outside world to understand your external environment because you don't have the words to ask for help in the way that you need. Um, so, that I think that's what makes it especially hard when you're going to primary school here. Um, and so then, like, fast forward 4 years into trying to assimilate, we leave to Mexico and then I have to assimilate in a Mexican culture um, where we're speaking a different language, we're writing in a different language, the expectations and academics were a lot different, and the level of rigidity and discipline in school was a lot more, you know, intense than it was here. So uh, I think that I'm very adaptable at this point. Dude, tell me about like any other skills that you can write on your resume. I am adaptable. Why? Well, long story short, I've had to assimilate twice. Um, but yeah, I think those would be three words that describe my teenage years. Um, because I think transitions in their nature are confusing, problematic, and chaotic. At this point of my writing journey, I've accepted that I am like Senora Sad. You know what I mean? Like, I love the pain in the music and the deep, deep feelings of sorrow and confusion and very dark in that sense. I think that those emotions are very, very raw and they're very transformative. So when you are experiencing any pain uh, that it's emotional and physical, I think that that's where change happens and that's where transformation happens. And it's the process of getting into this new person that you will become. um, I think that's what draws me a lot to writing like very depressed passages or poems. If I can compare it to music, I would compare it to like the music our parents would listen to, like you know Temerarios or songs that we didn't understand then and but now we do. I don't know if you guys know the song that he said, Detrás de mi ventana, veo pasar la mañana. Anyway, I'm not a singer, but that's kind of like the feelings that I write about, like anything really can inspire me, but um, music really when I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh, this is so sad. And they portray the emotion so perfectly. Uh, it inspires me, like, um, I love I love that emotion, that state of being. It's hard when you're going through it, But like looking back, you're like, well, if I didn't go through it, I would have probably, not get out of the situation or whatever. But yeah, I guess that's where I draw my inspiration um, from sad, dark, depressive emotions. Um, and I'm okay with that. Uh, right now I've been really onto Otra Noche de Llorar de Mon Laferte. You guys, if you have listened to that song, please leave a heart down there in the comments because I am in love with that song. And, I haven't been in the situation that the song's talking about, but I could really like put myself in her spot and feel what she's feeling. And oh my god, it just destroyed me. But I keep listening to it because it's just that good. Um, I think I've been writing since I think I've creatively started writing when I was like 15 years old. But I had a period of time where I didn't feel comfortable writing because someone very close to me in my family went through one of my diaries and made me feel ashamed of the things that I was writing in there. And so I just didn't feel safe to keep anything written out. And I kind of, put that thought on the back of my head and I just didn't write for a very long time. Um, but then I realized that I like hearing my thoughts and being able to write them and see them after. Um, it's very interesting because it's like you can there's a record of your thinking mind, um, and it's like a look into you when you get to know yourself a little bit better, articulate things in a much better way if you play around with the words and figure out how to say them the way that you want to say them. I think it gives me a kind of power, um, and sense of like independence, especially like trying to dominate my second language, which is English, which is what I now use a lot more. And I think that's just because a lot of my schooling I've done in English. So being able to have a conversation that's a little bit more rational and less humorous, or I guess I don't even want to say casual, but I think the mood in Spanish is a lot different. It's always like to joke around in a way. Um, they're like quick little comebacks because we are not really engaged with the language as much as our parents are. Um, so even though, if you ever like wonder why is it that I can only speak these things in English, well, it's because you've developed in that language in your outside world, and it's okay. I think that we need to stop feeling guilty for the languages that we choose to speak. And if you want to mix them, you can mix them. And if, it's the way in which we communicate. And you have to figure out how to blend them or use them whenever you want and be unapologetical about it. Uh, so that, you you make it part of your identity as much as you want. And I think all this to say is like you can do whatever you want. Um, and people can be mad at you, but as long as you are happy with who you are, how you speak, how you look, how you present, what you read, whatever, as long as you are comfortable with that, I think that's what matters. Fuck the world. Everyone just wants to be the same, and that's just boring. The first woman in my life who I saw as extraordinary was definitely my mother, and not I didn't see that as I was growing up. I can see that now as a grown woman who has, delved into the world of psychology. Um, but yeah, while I was growing up, I would definitely not want to say my mom, But today, I think that after the life she's had, that she hardly shares because what she has shared has been very, very painful. Um, she is very resilient, and the life that she was able to give me and my siblings, and the life that she was able to create for herself, is really one that I admire. And I am going to come visit her in a couple weeks, and hopefully she wants to do one of these podcast episodes with me, because her story, or her many stories, are worth sharing, are worth telling. Um, and I think that I just, want to highlight her extraordinary life, because she tends to forget how cool she is, how great she is, and how fun she is to be around. So, yeah, one of the things that I've really struggled with lately has been navigating motherhood. I've been trying to figure out how to not lose myself completely, and having a moment where I can conversate with cool women, or where I could share with you a little bit about me, just creating this space of reflection and conversation really helps my mental state. It's like a break from speaking to a little one all day and catering to this little one, and um just being around the toddler all day long, because not only did I transition into being a mom, I also had to leave my job and become a stay-at-home parent. And I think that that was like a hard hit, because I who doesn't like earning their own, or having their own income, or not depending on someone. And I think that uh, it really affected my self-esteem, not being able to provide or contribute to the household income, um, to just have to take care of this little one that is great. I love taking care of her. I don't mind it. I don't want to go back to work and, have someone else babysit her and raise her for me. You know, I knew when I became a mom, when I decided that this was a journey that I wanted to embark, uh, that a lot of me had to change and accommodate for this new being that was coming into my life. Um, and I cried, and I mourned the person that I used to be, and I became fully there for my tiny human. Um, if she cried and she needed me to carry her, I did. And till this day, I do. And I think that it's important to say that there's a lot of research out there on the best ways and different methods of, you know, raising a human. And I think that it's very irresponsible to go blindsided and not do just a bit of research to understand that their environment, the amount that you hold them for, the way you speak to them, speaking to them, how much it impacts their well-being, and how much it influences who they are. So, but yeah, how do you not lose yourself in motherhood when it occupies so much of your day? how do you hold on to the little bits, the memory of who you are. I think that one of the things that I'm doing now is creating space for me to create something or to be in like an adult space, right? I consider this an adult space because I consider, well, you adults. And I'm doing adult things, and I'm having my tea and my weed, and I'm just chilling. We're just chilling. We're relaxing, you know. So we're being adults here. Um, but yeah, I think it's almost impossible not to uh, get motherhood and womanhood all mixed up. Um, and it's because it almost feels like eternal, but at the same time, you see how fast these kids are growing, and it's almost unexplainable, you know? They're growing so fast. They're growing out of your arms in like 2 years, dude. It's crazy. It's awesome to see them grow too, but it's a lot of work. I think um, finding joy and accepting the imperfect makes our life easier and more lighthearted and more enjoyable for you and everyone else. Like today, you know, we went to the beach. It's Father's Day. Shout out to all the dads that are present, like the one that's in my child's life. Uh, I think I couldn't have chosen a better dad for her. But we went to the beach, and my toddler is fully potty trained. She has been for like over 6 months. And today she just decided to pee all over the place, everywhere, without telling us she had to go potty. So I don't know what that was about. But, but it was a perfect day, you know, despite the little accidents and the messiness of the day. It was perfect, you know, and I just cleaned up the pee and we just kept going with our day, and we kept wondering, are we just having too much fun that, you know, you don't want to let us know that you have to pee, but please let us know you're going to pee. Um, Kind of caught us off guard, but it was perfect. You know, I think that sometimes we take life too serious, and it's really not. We've got to remember it. We're just here to feel, to exist, to eat, and you know, have a good time. And if you don't know how to have a good time by yourself, then you're in big trouble, because a lot of our life is going to be with, well, ourselves. And I think you have to like yourself enough to hang out with yourself. Creo que también es importante hablar de la situación política que estamos viviendo. Y creo que uno de los privilegios que tengo es que mis padres pues no viven aquí. So I don't really have to worry about them going to work and, you know, getting deported. But I remember a time where, you know, it was definitely something that is always on the back of your mind, and this fear, because it's just the fear that we've lived with, that we've inherited through generational trauma, that is almost becoming unbearable. And, you know, it almost feels like you're at a point where you can finally breathe and be comfortable. And then all this hatred is being, you know, portrayed, and it's being put out there, and it's being promoted and propagated by the government. It puts us in a state of fear, and it's unfair, and it adds to the generational trauma that we've already been dealing with, and it just makes it feel never ending. But I think that it's beautiful to see how our culture is always united um, despite the situation. Because if there's one thing history's taught us is that we are fighters and we use our voices when we need to. And when we lose our fear, we're unstoppable. Especially in this country, there's Brown versus Board of Education, Cesar Chavez, the Chicano movement, and now we're having our own era of um, ethnic criminalization. And I think that we're standing up beautifully, and that we have to give it up for ourselves, for those of us who are showing up, for those of us who are being vocal and using our platforms, as little or as big as they may be, to speak out on the unfairness and on the, well, on the unfair criminalization of our people, our parents, our brothers and our sisters. I do hope that there's a lot more momentum to this, and I think that one of the greatest acts of activism you can do, no matter the age, is to educate yourself, to position yourself mm, in a way where you can't be talked down to. I think that sometimes we undervalue education. And when I talk about education, I don't mean like go to college, get a degree. If that's something you want to do, go for it. I love academia, and I think that one day I'll become a professor at a college or university. That's like the wildest dream that I have. But so far, I've lived and had every dream job that I've wanted since I was a child. And these are like very random jobs, but but I really like them, and I really wanted to be these when I was, young. Um, I remember I'd be like, I want to be a dance choreographer like Sabrina Bryan from the Cheetah Girls. And in my own way, I became it. I was doing dance lessons at a dance studio, anything. Luckily, they were like, you know, we'll hire you, we'll train you, and you can teach. And so we did that. And that was fun. And I became a personal trainer and a Zumba instructor. And I was doing my own choreography in Zumba and like group dance training and whatnot. So I was, the Sabrina Bryan in my life that I was aspiring to be. Um, and then I worked at a library before. I've worked at restaurants before. I've worked in a cannabis shop before, at a smoke shop. And so all my jobs have been kind of random, but I've fulfilled all of my dreams from when I was a child. And I think one of my adult dreams is to become a professor at some point. Um, and I think that you can do that in many ways, and you can give yourself enough time to do so. I had to take a long break from college education and structurized education because I didn't feel competent enough to, well, go right, go fulfill expectations in English. You know what I mean? I felt imposter syndrome like really hard. So, and there was a lot of other things going on. So I just had to take a break. And I took a very long break. But in that process, I took like a 5, 6 year break, maybe. And it worked. and worked, and now we're here. No, but took a long break. In the process, I read many books that changed my life and my perspective on education. Um, and that's what I mean. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of education, just it matters the kind of books that you get and how much you read. Because you have to feed your brain with other things other than social media, you know. So, what are the books that you're reading? How are these changing your life? Um, so, the first book that kind of pointed me into that direction was The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I've read that book like 3 times, and I've applied every one of its laws to my life, and I've lived happier since because I don't take things personal anymore. Like, the energy that you're putting off is your energy, and I've worked hard for it not to affect me, um, or to not rub off. I'll always give you the benefit of the doubt because who knows? I don't. Um, and so, you know, like rich books that make you inquisitive and make you want to learn more about other topics. So when I went back, I was still like undecisive as to what I wanted to do. I was doing my undergrad for like for a transfer in kinesiology. But then I had like 2 semesters left and 3 semesters left. Then I became pregnant. And for those of you who don't know, anatomy is like learning a third language as biology or science or, any of the well, yeah, science, biology classes, chemistry. It's a different language. You have to like learn all this terminology and learn how to apply it. So I was like, I can't do this. I have a baby. I don't sleep. I'm like up every 2 hours at night feeding this child. My brain was feeling foggy. Like I couldn't retain information as much because I was just so focused on the baby. So I talked to my counselor and I was like, listen, I think I better do psychology because I've read a lot of books, in the break that I've had. And I'm very interested in a lot of like the curriculum that I've seen on the catalog. I think I'm confident that they'll succeed. How easy can the transfer be? And she said, well, just take this, and this class, and you can be done in like the next semester. And I was like, dude, sign me up. So when graduation time came, and you have to apply for these things, and I did. I had the meeting with my counselor. She was like, hey, Mary, like, you have been taking so many different classes that you actually qualify for 3 more associates in arts. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, because when I would sit down and create my schedule, I would take the classes based on the description and how interested they sounded. I didn't, go to ratemyprofessor.com or ask about the professor because I genuinely wanted to see what the class was about. Uh, I think that the description and the course book tells you a lot because a lot of the classes that I took didn't use a textbook. They would use like different kinds of readings, like essays that they wanted to share with you, or certain books that they thought were applicable for the theme that we were working on, and so I would do my research, right, and I would really like take classes that I would be interested in. And I took a lot of like gender classes, feminism classes, women in America, Latinos in politics, Chicano arts, because it's a way of like discovering who you are. Education. So, because I took a variety of classes in my time at MPC, I ended up graduating with 4 AAs. in social sciences, communication and analytical thinking, lifelong and wellness, and psychology. And I've got one more year to finish my bachelor's in arts. And, you know, after that, maybe do a master's in education because, again, my child's education is very important to me and I'm thinking about homeschooling. So I have to be really prepared, right? That would be really cool. And I also want to do like a bachelor's in arts in La UNAM in psicología, like doing it in Spanish. I think that would be super cool because I just found out that like if you're a citizen from you can take these classes or you can get these careers for free online. And well, I have dual citizenship, so I can do that too, right? So that's something that I've been like thinking about and that I'm so open to do, and I think that would be super, super, super fun. Um, but yeah, it, the kind of professors that you get and how much you engage and how much you ask them help you succeed in the course, because then the knowledge becomes deeper, and the more personal the knowledge becomes to you, well, the easier it is for you to retain that information. And it turns out that this is true cognitively. This is how your brain works. The more personal you can make the information, the more that it sticks to you, right? um, So yeah, education transformed my life, and I think that's the greatest form of activism that you can do against the government. Educate yourself, um, and use the resources that they provide for us first generations to succeed. So it's never late to go to school if you want to, and it's never late to feed your brain with new ideas and change your life for what you want it to be. That's what I meant by like being creative in how you choose to live your life, because really we do have the power to create it how we want it and live it however it makes us happy, right? Well, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a good night, and don't miss the next episode. We'll see you here. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, share, if you just like content that you can chill with. Drink a cup of tea or smoke a joint.